What Jews fear the most. We've all heard this term where it's different as black and white. And what Jews don't fear per se is black people. And what they don't fear per se is white people. But what they absolutely do fear is black and white people, because we generally represent the world's polar opposites. The media, and we all know who owns and runs the media, puts their highest stock on this black and white difference. You'll see things like you'll hear about these tattooed white supremacists who put a black man behind their truck and wrap the black man up in chains and go barreling down the street until the black man's body parts rip off him one by one as they go speeding down the road. You'll also hear and see on TV stories of, a young white couple driving down the street and their car runs out of gas, or they get lost in a black neighborhood, and then a bunch of crazed black men descend on the car, rape the woman, make the man drink bleach, decapitate them, and burn the car. And those two scenarios are actually true scenarios. They were on the news recently, within the past couple of years. But those scenarios make both groups want to go out and just blindly kill the person of the other group. And that's precisely what the media wants us to do. When you wipe away the veneer of the emotions and how tragic those things are, because I think most of us, no matter what we feel about the opposite race, we absolutely do not think that any human being deserves to be murdered senselessly, violently. I think a sensible person could not agree with that. And in both of our groups, you'll find those fringe weirdos that will say, yes, I'm glad that's one less cracker, one less nigger in the world kind of thing. But they're the extreme on both sides. But when you look at it statistically, when you look at it soberly, and you wipe away the veneer of showing that stuff, which they show again and again, what they're trying to do is just create fear. But the truth is, and the statistics support this, look at the 2011 census, 99% of murders and crimes, 99.3% are same race crimes. It's white people killing white people. It's black people killing black people, and etc. 99.3%. That other 0.7% is, cross-racial murders. But we focus so much on that when it doesn't make sense. Nowhere in the history of our rational lives do we focus on the 0.7%. Nowhere else in our lives. Now there's these people that are so-called racial supremacists, and I'm speaking of Dr. David Duke, Tom Metzger, Minister Louis Farrakhan. These men in that same media, and again, we know who runs and owns the media, will have you believe that these men are absolute racists. When in the past, if you look at their lives, if you go back 20, 25 years, you could hear them say incendiary things. They will use words like kike and nigger and blue-eyed devil. And those incendiary words were said when they were young men. But as we age, all of us, each of us as we age, we become more mature in our thinking and in our ways. None of those men have used such terms in 20 to 25 years, but the media will have you think that they still think that way when they don't. So I call them so-called black or white supremacists, because as a general rule, I don't believe the media. Anyway, if you look at those men, and they're so completely different, Dr. David Duke and Tom Metzger being white, so-called white supremacists, and Minister Louis Farrakhan being a so-called black supremacist, they could not be any more different. But here's the rub. This is where, and this is what Jews fear the most. If you were to put Dr. David Duke or Tom Metzger in blackface and Minister Louis Farrakhan in whiteface and send them to each other's meetings, all of those groups would agree with what those men were saying. Each of those men absolutely have long since put down their obvious hatreds, and by that I mean it's easy to see someone in front of you and say, okay, that person's a problem, but it's the hidden hand that causes that other person to be your problem. It's not the crack dealer, in other words, that you see as you're driving to go to your job downtown. You see this black crack dealer. You can look at him and he's your immediate focus, but if you look behind him, where's he getting that stuff? How's it flying and floating into our neighborhoods? How's it flying and floating into America? That takes a sophisticated hand where there's commerce and banking and all of that has to take place. That's the hidden hand that we generally don't see. And when one matures and grows, you begin to focus on that hidden hand and not the obvious. So these people are beginning to say the same things, and in fact, they're going to each other's meetings and they're speaking their causes to the other groups. And I'll say it again, you have the white so-called supremacists going to black meetings, and you have the black so-called supremacists going to white meetings. And as proof, I am hoping that you will take the time, if you hadn't seen it, to look at Tom Metzger, the so-called white supremacist. He went to the new Black Panther Party meeting, and he was talking about what we all have in common. And he also says in that meeting, he's also spoken to the Minister Louis Farrakhan and been in meetings with him and spoke with the Muslims. What I need you to see, and I've attached this to the bottom of this video blog that I'm creating. I want you to see it and click on it before they delete it. But that's the thing that the Jews fear the most, is that when blacks and whites, who are diametrically different, diametrically opposed, but say we are in agreement to what our greater issue, not issues, but what our greatest issue is Zionism. We are hand in hand in ending that. That is what the Jews fear the most, because once black and white unite on that singular issue, and then afterwards we can work out our own stuff and go our separate ways. But once we address and defeat Zionism, then the world will follow in kind.